Hello everyone, my name is Dorian and welcome to a GT3 comparison video. We are at the Red Bull Ring and I'm gonna take my top 6 of the GT3s. I left out the McLaren and I left out the Ford because they're not very popular, and also I don't own them and I already had to buy a bunch of other content, so sorry if you guys drive it, I left those out. But I did bring in the Porsche GT3 R, the brand new GT3 that came out. There's a huge update. A lot of the cars are very different now, and I couldn't wait to test them out and make a video about it, so we're just gonna jump straight to it. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and if you want to see more of this type of videos, racing videos and stuff like that, then subscribe to the channel. Before we begin, just a side note, everything that I'm saying here is unique to my experience. I drive differently than some of you guys, some of us are completely different, regardless of pace. It's just a matter of driving style, matter of experience. And the fact that this Red Bull track is very unique might have gave me a perspective that you guys might not see eye to eye with. So keep that in mind. This track is very smooth, and some bumpier tracks are gonna make the cars feel different. Everything is tested out with the baseline, the medium sprint, and the medium downforce sprint, that is. And the same track conditions, same amount of fuel, same tire temps pretty much. So I try to keep it as consistent as possible, but again, this is me driving, not you, so my experience is gonna differ. And just take those things with a grain of salt. If you disagree or agree, if you want to contribute to anything, leave a comment, let me know what you think about all this, and hop over to my Discord as well. Let's jump to it. Okay, so we're in the Porsche, and I'm having fun. This is incredible. The force feedback is light, as you would expect from a car that's not exactly front heavy. All the weight is in the back, and you can just feel it when you press on the throttle and the wheel just gets light, but it's so precise, it's so accurate, it puts the car exactly where you want it to be. It's like all the car reviews I've ever seen about Porsches. That's how it feels like to drive. I've never driven a Porsche in real life, but from what I've heard, this is pretty damn accurate. It sounds fantastic, as I'm sure you can hear right now. The brakes are absolutely incredible. You can just smash them and the car will stop, and you can trail brake all the way into the corner. Really rewards the trail brake. You keep that weight on the front end. You rotate the car. You don't want to chuck it in. You want to be slow. You want to be smooth with the steering wheel, because the minute you lose the rear end, it will be very, very hard to catch. Those are just the characteristics of a Porsche, isn't it? That's just incredible. I'm having a great time. Maybe not the best force feedback in the category, but as far as the steering itself is concerned, the car is so responsive, it makes up for it. I've drove the Ford GT earlier, and it's just, I think that has the best force feedback in iRacing period, or maybe in GT3s. But here, I don't know, maybe it's just my wheel. It does feel a bit light. I'm going with much harder settings than I'm usually running, just to get some response out of it. But again, the communication that I'm getting is excellent. That means I'm feeling absolutely everything in the car, and the car is very stable on the brakes. And look here, first gear, I'm just gonna slam it. Nothing. It just plows through. It doesn't over rotate. It's so easy to catch on those little slides, those low speed slides, because you have all that weight on the rear end. It's just, it digs in. It's like like a dragster. It just digs in, gives you all the grip in the world, and just motivates you to plow through the corners, the low speed ones. And right here, when we reach a high speed corner, it wants your smoothness. It wants the best you got. You just want to rotate it nicely into the curb and manage the understeer on the way out. As you give it a lot of throttle and you make the nose go a bit lighter, you gotta manage the throttle very gently. You gotta be very smooth on your inputs in high speed corners, but you can be so aggressive on low speed corners, and that's what makes this car have a lot of character. Over here, you can just slide into this corner and the car will stick, as long as you give it some throttle to maintain stability. Absolutely incredible. And on this track, Red Bull Ring, it's beautiful, by the way. They've done a great job. One of my favorite tracks from Gran Turismo back in the day. And yeah, I mean, it's just beautiful. The off tracks are bang on as far as I'm feeling right now. It doesn't feel like I'm being nerfed by the off tracks at all. The view is incredible. The altitude changes. This is one of the best experiences in iRacing right now, in my honest opinion. So if you're thinking about buying a Porsche or getting into GT3s in general, because they've all been changed dramatically this season, now's the time. I can drive this thing forever. But we're gonna have to test it against the others. But that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna shut up for this lap. See what sort of pace it got on its first lap after the out lap. Here we go. That's a 130.339. Let's move on to the next car. So we got the BMW M4. Lots of changes, but one really nice one. Sounds so much better. The blow-off valve, listen to this. Oh, that's beautiful. Every time you go on the brakes, you're smiling. I love it. I absolutely love it. They made it sound like a proper race car. Best upgrade so far. Now let's see how where the differences are really, because compared to the old one, this feels a hell of a lot more nimble. It wants to change direction a lot more, especially on the brakes. And on the power, in high-speed corners or mid-speed sort of thing, pretty stable, but still rotates. The problem is low-speed corners. It kind of struggles with that. I'll show you turn number 2 here. This is turn 1. We're gonna go to turn number 2, and you need first gear to rotate the car, but you can't really accelerate in first gear. It's just gonna snap. I'll show you that in a second. That makes you work a little bit harder if you want to get it up to pace. Gotta put in first. As you can see, my rear right was just spinning in place, and I had to constantly catch it, and I was losing all my momentum. I couldn't put even half the power down. I was just spinning my wheels. And this is just the baseline setup, right? This is the medium downforce sprint. But there's a whole series based on this setup, so it's gonna be pretty dramatic for a lot of people. I'm sure that could be mitigated and changed with a proper setup. Even though this setup feels good, the car feels pretty balanced. I'm sensing it hasn't become easier to drive. It has become a little bit more difficult to drive, but potentially a little bit faster. They did nerf the top speed, the horsepower. It was nerfed a little bit. So it's not as useful on the straights as it used to be. But you still get that stability under braking, which is super useful for Nordschleife and Bathurst, places like that. Yeah, the car turns in nicely on the brakes and continues to rotate very steadily, I would say. Very predictable on high speed. Like right here, you have to be careful on the brakes because it's gonna want to overrate. But once you put the power down, it's just so predictable. So if you want to be early on the power out of high-speed corners or into high-speed corners, that's really gonna help you with this car. Force feedback, as good as it ever was. I always like the force feedback in this car. Some say it's kind of dead, but it's GT3s. I think it's supposed to be kind of dead. You're supposed to feel the back end and a little bit of the curbs, and that's it. This car is amazing on the curbs. I tried it at Road Atlanta today, and it's just, it doesn't care. Like a very curb-heavy track, this would definitely be very useful. So keep that in mind. You can see the rear right is just spinning off, and if I put it in second, it's just too long. I'm not getting any power. It's very weird. But this is that's a very specific corner. Not every track has that type of corner. So I think it depends on the track with this thing. It's not going to be a complete all-rounder. It's going to be hard to commit to this car for a whole season. Unless you know what you're doing with the setups, obviously, and you're running open setups like VRS. But with the fixed series, the Fanatec series, that could be a bit problematic. Right, so I'm gonna go do a lap now and see how it compares to the Porsche. Right, so same with the Porsche, I'm gonna do the first lap after the out lap. The car is heavy, the tires are warm-ish, not perfect. I want to test all the cars in the same conditions, because the first lap and the second lap are always so important in any race. You need a controllable car, and this is a really good measurement, in my opinion. That's a 1:30.297, so very similar, slightly faster than Porsche, but very similar in terms of lap times. And the BMW, you should note that the BMW is notoriously good on cold tires, but it does slow down on warmer tires. And I'm not sure if the Porsche is the same. I think the Porsche is the opposite. So, you know, results may vary, so to speak. This is only one track with one driver, but it seems very competitive. If, you know, there's less than half a tenth between them, I'm already very satisfied with the BOP so far. Let's move on to the different car. So we're driving the Audi R8, and I didn't feel like there's a huge difference between the old one and the new one. It's 10 kilograms heavier, which you may feel under braking, maybe not. It's a very solid change, but we'll let the lap times decide whether it made a big difference or not. The big difference, though, is the steering rack being faster. The car feels more responsive on your initial wheel input, but it doesn't seem to make the car snappy. Maybe because it's running less cambered out, but it doesn't feel like it's snappier. But it's always been a little snappy. Like off power, turning into a high-speed corners, there's a tendency to lose the rear end with this car, and it snaps. You can't catch it. That's the risk of running this car. Now, the Audi and the fixed Fanatec series has been the meta in top split throughout the last season, and It's been pretty much the strongest overall car in GT3s in general, it seems. The car is just too good for its own sake. It got things a little boring. Got into a stalemate where you're running an Audi 1 make every top split you get into. I'm hoping that won't be the same this season. But again, the lap times will make that decision. It's very easy to drive, as it's always been on low speed corners. Very easy to put the power down. The turn in is just great. You can slam on the brakes and you'll still have plenty of front end grip. Like here, I'm braking late, all the way into first gear, trail braking, clipping the apex nicely, smashing it on the way out. Not a hint of oversteer. The car just, you know, just on rails. It's beautiful. So it's still a great car to drive, that's for sure. Let's do a lap and compare it to the other two and see what happens. Right, so let's do a quick one. The Audi does take some time to warm up its tires, so it might not be an optimal lap for this car, but I want to make sure I'm testing all cars under equal conditions, and time is of the essence. So this is the first lap after the out lap. Let's see how it goes. .249, so almost a tenth faster than the Porsche. Right, so for me the Mercedes doesn't feel any different. I drove it this morning and now I'm driving it post-patch. Feels pretty much exactly the same for me. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here, but I don't feel like there's any significant difference. The characteristics of the Mercedes are rotation, 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 especially under power. It does like to over rotate sometimes on corner entry, and it kind of makes it difficult to manage if you want to keep the pace up. But on the other hand, it's very, very controllable. It's very easy on the edge. So if you have a tendency to like a car that rotates but not exactly the fastest guy in the world at catching slides, which, let's face it, I'm not, then this is a really good car for you. I love the Mercedes. It's one of the best cars, I think, on the service, or at least in GT3s. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. If you're ever driven one, which most people who drove GT3s have, no big differences. We're just gonna have to see what the pace is like on this track and on other tracks throughout the season. But yeah, you're getting tons of rotation on the power. I can floor it, and it doesn't understeer too bad. Obviously, I was being too aggressive there. I was just trying to demonstrate that it doesn't have a tendency to understeer at all. The car just turns beautifully in third gear, fourth gear. It works great. You can overdo it, and you can snap the rear end, but this catchable, I'm gonna try to do that here. It's just, it's not even that big of a deal, you know? The car is very easy to drive. I don't know which one is easier to drive though, the M4 or the Mercedes. I'm kind of split between those, because the M4 does feel a bit lighter, a little more nimble now, which is how the Mercedes always felt like to me. It was always the more nimble front engine car. But now there's a proper fight between them. Be cool to have a league where only those two will be competing to see how they stack up against each other. Either way, let's do the lap real quick and see how it does. Right, as you can already see, I've done a 30.2. Not even trying, like talking to you guys, but I think I can go faster than that. I think the Mercedes got something in it. One lap after the out lap. Let's see how it goes. Definitely better on the power here than the BMW. We're comparing the front engines. Better on the power here. Better in first gear. First car under 30s. Looks like it. 29.9. This is either the perfect car for my driving style, which it very well could be because I love how it handles, or it's just very suitable for this track, or it's just overpowered right now post update. I'm sorry I can't give you guys a definitive answer. I need to try all 5 cars here today on 10 different tracks before I make that decision, and then compare it to other drivers as well and take averages. That's just too much data to try to push out so late at night. I don't have the manpower nor the time, but all things considered, this is the fastest car so far by a good margin, 2.5 tenths. So, the Ferrari, well, very comfortable on the power, very easy to drive. Does have a tendency to understeer. It's really important not to overheat the front tires with this thing, which sometimes make you only brake around 50 to 60%. That requires a lot of precision and good timing, and that's not something a novice driver typically has. So even though this car is quite easy to drive, it's not as easy to get the pace out of it. As you can see, I was just washing out of the corner. If I just overdid it a little bit. I was trying to get the back end to kick out and I couldn't. It understeers and understeers and understeers, and that's very safe in its nature, but it does make it a little more difficult to squeeze more speed out of this thing if you're trying to be aggressive. See, if I was braking 50-60%, I could keep the front tire temps and the turn-in would be feeling great. I'm trying not to overcook the front tires and the car just rotates very nicely. But if I was a little harder on the brakes there, it would have been a lot harder to turn in the car, and I would lose a lot of speed on the exit. That's something to consider with this car. Even though it's so notoriously good to drive, so easy, and really good for endurance racing, I can see myself struggling with this car in a race where I would have to outbrake someone, then manage to keep my line on the outside or the inside, and just trying to fight the understeer so much. It's just not my style of driving, but very good force feedback. Really rewarding just to drive this thing, and you can get a lot of pace out of it. There's a lot of top split guys and a lot of esports guys that prefer this car for a lot of good reasons. Yeah, I finally got the back end to kick out. It's not easy. So, you know, it could have great pace in almost every track. It's gonna be the number 2 or 3 car on almost every track. So it's a very good all-rounder, but it's usually never at the top. It's usually never at the top. So you want to take that into consideration and make a decision. I'm gonna show you guys the lap, and we'll see how it does. Okay, first lap after the out lap. This car does enjoy the cold tires a little bit better. So let's see how it goes. Shut up. This is a full tank of gas, by the way. It starts with 55 liters. Fuel consumption is a bit different in this car. When you're not burning up the front tires, you can turn in at insane speeds. But if you're slamming on the brakes, it gets quite tricky to rotate. Oof, a little sketchy there. Pretty good. Pretty good. I felt like, yeah, 30 flat, 30 0, 5.8. That's a top 3 right now. We're driving the Lamborghini, and if you just bought iRacing, get this car. It is unbelievably easy to drive. I am shocked and amazed. It used to be pretty easy to drive on the low speed corners, but kind of snappy on the high speed. There's no snappiness that I can see so far on high speed corners. Probably not the fastest car, but if you're going for consistency, if you're not top 1% in the video game, then this is, 10 out of 10. My recommendation to you. Everything's just so easy with this car. There's so much grip on the rear end, but it doesn't understeer as much as you would think for such a stable car. I'm taking it in 4th gear. The car just rotates nicely. I usually need to put it in 3rd gear to avoid the washout. And I am driving under the limits because I'm talking to you guys, but still, usually on this type of corners, the car would have a tendency to snap. Now it's purely on rails. It just doesn't want to go anywhere. And this car, the Lamborghini, has always been good on tire management as well. It can manage the tire temperatures and therefore the tire wear quite well through a course of a longer race, 40 minutes or any endurance race. This is a solid choice. If you're not trying to win top split, this should be a top contender for you. You should definitely consider it. Let's see how long it takes me to get a good lap time with this thing, because I want to see if I can get it to be competitive. Kind of a personal challenge. I think I can get it down to a 30.2, but we're gonna have to wait and see. Let's do that on the first lap after the out lap. See how it goes. Tires are not optimal. This car does have a tendency to heat up the tires a little later than others. It's amazing this is the sister car for the Audi. It feels so different. The rear end is just from a different planet compared to the Audi. Let's see what sort of time we can do. Wow. Wow, this is just on being easy to drive. This is the fastest car for me. Now, let's take everything with a grain of salt. Let's pause for a second. I've been driving this track since I started driving the Porsche, that is. I've been doing more and more laps, getting used to this track more and more, so obviously I would get faster. It's not like I have 1,000 laps here. The track just came out today. So definitely I've became a little bit better at the track, so that impacted our lap times. That being said though, this was the easiest I've ever had today to get a 29 or a decent time altogether. I drove pretty much on the limit, and at no point did I feel I was about to lose the car. With the Mercedes, I did a very similar time, and I almost lost it a couple of times, and I felt like, ooh, I'm right on the edge. That could be more engaging, more fun, but I got a good feeling about this car. I might stick to it. We're gonna have to wait and see. Either ways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This has been a pleasure to make, and I'm gonna participate throughout the full GT3 season next season. Basically, that means that I'm gonna do the Fanatec, fixed series, and I'm gonna do some VRS occasionally, and I'm gonna start live streaming very soon. So you guys are more than welcome to join in on that. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired, a little slurring my words, because I want to make sure I'm getting this video out today. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hop over to my Discord, leave a comment, let me know what you think about all of this. Do you want to see more of this type of videos? Are you interested in GT3 content? I'm also going to do the LMP2 Fix series, and I'm going to continue with the F3s. So it's going to be pretty diverse, hopefully, throughout this season. See you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.